So somebody asked a really good question the other day, Stuart. He says, how do you choose model games for your openings? Right, well, not that sort of model, or that one, but your actual chess games. And I think this is really, really important, actually.
When you have an opening idea, you should really be following that all the way through. Really, you should be all the way through to an ending. You should be knowing what you're doing in ending. Now, this is
what model games are useful for doing, starting from the opening, seeing yourself through to the middle game to the end game. So that's ideal. So this is what I always used to do. These are the things that I used to look for myself. So number one, you should aim to select pure games which capture the essence and the themes of the opening. So what I mean by that is, if that opening that you choose, for example, D3, I'll stick with the D3 Roy as the example throughout. In the D3 Roy, 95% your castle kingside, right? And a key theme is bringing the knight, right, to the F5 square, right? So I want my model game to tick both of those boxes. And how do I want to play that game? The different ways you can play that opening. I want to bring my pieces to the king side and make the king, right? Nice and simple. So my model game is going to include that. And the essence of the opening, particular openings and particular moves that the black's going to play are going to have to be typical and represent, realistic game from that particular viewpoint, that particular opening, which comes to number two, really, should represent the best, most realistic outcome. So both of those two combine really a little bit. So ideally, the game should be short, 20 to 30 moves in total, if appropriate. So a model game doesn't want to be 50, 60, 70 moves long, if necessary, unless that particular opening, like maybe types of the Caro-Kann, variations of Caro-Kann, you're aiming for an M game, for example. So then I include, it's not possible to have quick wins in some openings, right? The opening dictates the middle game and the end game. So yeah, if it's one of those where it's an ending in mind opening, then ideally not going to be that short. But ideally, wherever possible, if you keep them short, they're more memorable. Nice quick wins, nice clean game is what I'd be looking for, is what I used to always look for anyway. Number four, the opponent should play realistic moves, not too many blunders. And if they do make blunders, they're kind of understandable from that opening. So you're not going to win a chess game without someone blundering. So you're not going to win a chess game in 25 moves without somebody making a blunder. But your model game doesn't want to include 3 or 4 bad moves from the opponent, 3 or 4 outright blunders, because that's not maybe it is realistic. It depends, doesn't it? But, you really just want to find one move where you go, opponent did this, it looks natural, but bang, look at this, bang. And, you actually win from that opening. And the last point, they could be from older classic games. So ideally, memorable Grandmaster games, but they don't have to be. So you want absolute ideal key model game would be a model game for that particular opening, played with Capablanca or something like that, and maybe it was one of the major kind of notable games in that particular opening, and then obviously theories develop later on. So you might want to choose that if you can, but if you can't find that sort of game, or you're not sure, you can't really find it, anything that covers those themes and those 4 points above, I think it's absolutely fine. And even if the game is not from a Grandmaster game, right, it's just from a normal, regular game, right, it doesn't even have to be from a real game, right, it could just be from analysis, right, it doesn't have to be a GM game. I think ideally it probably would be, but it doesn't have to be. So let me just show you what that looks like in terms of the D3 Roy, as an example, ticking all of those boxes. So if you do know something about the opening that you are looking at and you're trying to find the model games, you know some of the themes and some of the ideas, it's donkey work time, right? So you need to go to the databases, whatever databases you use, and select and go through, maybe you can select it's a number of moves and you're looking for, if it's a white opening, white win, an under 25 move if that's realistic. And, this is a case of just scrolling through games and, so putting the work in. It's not lost work, really, because if you're flicking through lots of different chess games at speed in your particular opening, then you're still picking up general ideas and themes and stuff like that. So that if you know the opening, then that's what you can do. If you don't know the opening, I'll come to that later on. So let's just have a look at this game that I selected for my example of the D3 Roy. And this came from an analysis section, right? It's not a real game. It doesn't exist, right? Only in analysis. So yeah, so first things, castle kingside, got a D3, structure, bishop took to A to D, C2, castle kingside. Black's just played standard moves, right? Nothing outrageously wrong with any of these moves at all so far. So the next plan is to bring this knight to f5. That's a sort of stage 2. Black, again, plays nothing outrageous, nothing like challenging that plan like d5. I'd go queen, e2, get out of the way of in a possible exchange of queens because I want to checkmate on the king side, right? But black's kind of letting white do what they want, which is okay. It's not no horrific blunders or anything like that. That's not a very good move, but it's very, very common. Like h6 just weakens the king side for no reason in this opening. But it's a very understandable move, right? There's nothing outrageously wrong with that. You're not hanging a piece or anything like that. And I've seen that hundreds of times, right? So I know that that's absolutely fine. And I know that's something that black does. So next stage, knight on f5. And then this is an understandable move. So black's doing nothing wrong. He's not really being aggressive and challenging. Should be pushing d5 or something like that. Or being active. Just sort of passively defending. But I've seen this before countless number of times. So my idea then is whack the queen onto the king side. And this is a blunder because it allows this, which is the point of h6. And then bang, bang, checkmate, finish. Right, so that's a really nice, memorable model game, and it doesn't even exist. It comes to, I think there's many games probably up to this point. There are games, but the ending, this, I think I've made this up. This is just analysis that I've just quickly looked at. So that'll be an example of a model game that ticks all of those boxes. Maybe not at the last point, it's not from a Grandmaster game, but it doesn't matter. It's memorable. It's something that I could think, wow, yeah, I can see that. That's double knight kind of thing, maneuver around the king side. It definitely works. So what about if you don't know nothing about the opening? So this is what I'm going to talk about next. Oh, in case you were wondering, in this position, actually, I know this is not the point in the video, but you might wonder, well, instead of this move, which just, at the very least, allows winning of the queen, what about if black played king f8, then you still bang, and then you can win, bringing the queen in, you come in with the bishop. This is a nice move with the bishop often comes to b3 at the last minute. Here's just an example line. Checkmate. So, yeah, so either way, really, really nice attacking game that I've just made up for the purposes of creating a model game. And I'm also going to talk about what the hell you should do in model games as well. So keep watching for those last 2 points, and then you're free to go and do what you want. Oh, you can turn off, but don't. So what if you don't know anything about the opening at all? Well, in that case, it's time to get that donkey jacket well and truly on and start digging around in databases, right? You're going to have to flick over hundreds of games and then start to identify themes. Like, so if you flicked over 100 games in your opening that you're going to look at, you're going to start identifying themes. So you're going to go, well, actually, we castle kingside 95% of the time. Oh, this knight maneuver seems to be coming to f5 quite a lot. And you start to identify those common themes. Like, and if you've got an opening book anyway, if you're buying an opening book or an opening course, they should include model games in them. But I always like to find my own as well as addition to that, because I think the more work you put in, the more you get the donkey jacket out and you start doing stuff yourself, the better it sticks in theory, because you put in more work in. You're not just sort of passively borrowing that model game that someone's just given to you. You're actually doing the work and you're finding it yourself, or you're making it up yourself, like I've just done in that example. So I think that's important. So, okay, you've got your model games, right? What do you do next with them? Well, what I used to do, I used to put them into a database, and when I had a chess program, Fritz 14 or something it was, and it's the only one I've still got, and I put them into a database and I put them onto a file on my phone, and I got a Chessbase app so that I could flick through those model games when I wanted to, just to remind myself of those model games. And I do that for each opening, which was a hell of a lot of hard work when you're playing E4. But if you're playing smaller openings, then you've got less work to do, hopefully. So yeah, I do that. Nowadays, there's Chessable as well, so you could input it there. I wouldn't necessarily train it as an opening that I'd train and memorise it that way, because that's kind of too much work and it kind of defeats the point, really. You're not memorising that particular game, just getting a general theme, general ideas. So I would just regularly go back to the model games, and you might have one for each different area of your opening. So, for example, in the D3, I'll go back to that again. If black fianchettos on the king side, that plan's no good. Right, that king can't get onto f5 because the square's blocked. So then I need a model game for that. When that happens, and it's a lot of work, so that's why I packed it. So you need model games for each sort of variation within the opening. So maybe from the D3, right, if I had 7 or 8 model games, that might cover most of the themes. Maybe less, maybe a bit more. And you've got those model games, and then you could use that instead of drilling openings if you want to. You could just keep flicking through, those model games just to refresh yourself. Generally what happens in those openings. So anyway, that is my advice on what I would do with how to select model games and what the hell I would do with them. So thanks for watching again, and I'll see you at some other point. Goodbye.